It's time for Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnett Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Boy, on the edge of possibility today, Barnett.
Good moment.
Freeman Michaels here.
Good moment, Freeman. Good moment, folks. Good moment, listeners. You know, this music, this theme music, the middle of the night, I heard this music. I sort of dreamed this music, and I shot up in bed. I thought, oh, my God, I'm late for the show.
That's fantastic.
I'm late for the show.
Oh, there's a theme there.
There is a theme there. There's lots going on. Lots to talk about. Lots and lots to talk about. I mean, my goodness, so many interesting stresses and developments and challenges in the world, the outer world, the
all right,
world.
So we were having a conversation that I want to start right into earlier today about the harmonics and all these little tuning forks, some representing frequencies that we could call, if we wanted to, higher frequencies. Ones that lift us up in some way. Others that seem to do less than that.
Well, yeah, let's recap it. We'll recap
all
it
right,
for our
right.
listeners.
Get folks tuned in.
What we were talking about, you really don't want to have coffee with us in the morning. So what we were talking about is,
this is just an extension of coffee. That's
exactly.
all we're doing here.
It's just continued, but I could use a little supersizer of caffeine right now. So what we were talking about are some of the thinking and some of the belief structures and some of the emotional experiences. All of these things, as we know, as our listeners all know, these are vibrational experiences. They're literally frequencies. So it's almost, we were talking about having this particular belief system, which for the most, maybe we're aware of it, for the most part, most of them are stealth. And you kind of smack that tuning fork on your leg and you hold it up and there's this pure sound. And then there's a whole nother belief system or a whole nother emotional experience that's lodged in there in this kind of reservoir of the psyche or the soul, or however we hold our vision of ourselves. Smack that on our knee and hold that up is another pure frequency. But those two frequencies together, they create a harmonic. And then we have, as Whitman said, we contain multitudes. These multitudes of intelligences, all of which are operating out of thought and belief and choice and decision and attitude and feeling and assumptions about the world. So just conceive, if you will, imagine, if you will, like these hundreds, thousands, infinite tuning forks. All you smack them on your knee and hold them up, and they're all vibrating pure frequency. And they all come together and create waves until finally there's this standing wave of resonance. And that standing wave of resonance, it's precipitated through our subconscious mind into time and into space, and it shows up as our reality.
I love that. What you just did, that was the kind of music right there.
Well, yeah, we should just call it a day right now.
Yeah, let's go home.
Put this on a loop, Spence. We're going for coffee.
Commercials. We're going back to the coffee shop.
Let's sell some cars.
That's it. Oh. But I think the context of this was so brilliant because we were talking about things that we both hold as visions of possibility and relating to the possibility with a sense of the various tuning forks that get struck.
Yeah.
Right? And some, again, kind of lift us up, and others come in at a different angle. And so how we hold all these elements in the context of this thing that we're committed to in our vision, this possibility it's bigger than us. We aren't going to get to know how it looks. Every time we try to get in the control game, that's another frequency that tends to distort these more pure frequencies.
Distorts the overall resonance.
It does. But there's so what we were talking about this morning, where we were both talking about a vision, talking about something that we're vested in creating, and how these frequencies all come together, and this harmonic, which you were just describing, that is our lives, that we know will play out in some way or another, but we're holding it in a particular context, which we're calling the vision. And that's what I want to start with today. I want to start about a vision that lifts us, that we can offer all these various aspects of our experience, we can recontextualize them.
We
Right?
probably need to hear from a visionary at this point.
A big visionary.
Well, Spence is here.
Besides Spence.
Spence told me a story about a gig he was judging last night at
I
the
know, that was
local
hysterical. I heard
comedy
it.
store. It's just fantastic. I'm not sharing with you folks.
Yeah,
but
it's a
just
good
take our
story.
word for it. It was great. It was a
Third segment today.
Third segment, we're gonna get it. It was-
So stay tuned because there's a great story coming up in the third
But we
segment.
do need, aside from Spence, we need another visionary. We need,
us one,
unfortunately,
man.
you know who we have with us today? Take
do.
a guess. You do?
I do.
How do you know? You
you
read my
sent it
email
to
now all of
me.
a sudden? It's a new day.
You actually have me now on your calendar. Do you realize when you calendar something, I'm invited when it's this time zone? You put me in.
You know, I've been seeing a lot of you recently. That
That's why I keep
explains how
showing
you
up.
just keep showing
You
up
just put me on
everywhere.
your calendar. I'm programmed.
What if we had Jim Channon with us?
That'd be fantastic.
Do you know who? Let me refresh you for the 2 or 3 of you that are driving around Ventura County or Santa Barbara County who don't know who Jim Channon is. Pull over.
Pull over.
Jim's well known as a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. He's also well known in our community for having created the first Earth Battalion Operations Manual.
Fantastic.
If you don't have a copy of that, that's unfortunate.
Yep.
I
one.
once read a magazine article that described Jim as a global visionary and a world-class intelligent optimist. How's that? I'd love,
Fantastic.
if you could go through life and come
If I
to the
could
end
get
of your
that
days.
kind of title.
Yeah, as opposed to, he got a gold watch.
He put in his time.
He was also featured in Forbes magazine as and described in Forbes as the world's first corporate shaman.
That's right.
So this is a guy that... Oh, wait a second. The best part.
The movie about him.
Was there a movie about him?
Well, he was.
I'm kidding.
yeah.
I'm kidding. So anybody ever seen Men Who Stare at Goats? Jim was the goat.
Get him on the show, would you?
Jim, are you there?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we are so glad to have you with us.
Oh, we're so glad.
Yeah,
Well,
just for the...
You told me that radio, this wasn't exactly like morning radio, but you guys can roll. You guys are like stupid surf.
Wait, listen, we knew we were having you on. We had to bring our
That's right,
our
better
A-game. just for the record, just to set the record straight,
Yeah.
listeners, Jim was not actually the goat, but he did stare at the goats. I
No.
think it was Jeff Bridges. I think the role that Jeff played in the movie was based largely on you.
Yes. Well, they took the manual. They had 125 ideas about human excellence, and they just kind of, the poor screenplay writer just put it in the mincer, and they had to make half of it sight gags, and the other half could be sort of like provocative but semi-real stuff. And it came out. Initially, I read the script. They gave me a chance to read the script and say no, but they weren't going to give me any money.
I just want to know whether you read the script or you remote viewed the script.
Yeah, that's it. Did you just osmose the thing, or did you actually sit down and read it?
Or you
Just
Cuisinarted
like
it?
you, I have intuitions and impulses like everybody else. Except what I do is draw them down on a piece of paper, and then I hook the papers together on the wall with tape, and then I try to write a story about it.
Oh, I love that. I
Yeah,
love that.
and trying to twist it in the right way, but knowing full well Joseph Campbell was completely right. This is a hero's journey. There's never been a grand adventure God organized that isn't a hero's journey. So it's going to be half good and half pushy.
Listen,
Yeah.
but you are, to talk about the hero's journey, talking about a vision, let's put those two things together. You don't strike me as any sort of classic hero in any way. You are as post-heroic
Thanks a
as
lot.
anyone. And this is high this is high praise because the leaders that, for those of you that watched Batman, Commissioner Gordon, sage that he is, said about Batman, he said he's not the leader he's not the hero that we deserve, but he's that we need, but he's the one we deserve. So that begs the question: who then is the hero that we need, and not the one we deserve? And it's a post-heroic.
I love
figure.
that post-heroic.
It's something that is so far off what we call the reservation on this show that it's just expanding what it is to be a human being. So you are certainly making maps both figuratively and literally. I mean, anybody go on to your website, they can get a first-hand experience of some of the maps that you have literally drawn when you say you're taping paper up.
Yeah.
You're living in a incendiary device.
Yeah, I'm
flammable.
Extraordinarily conservative in a way, but when I put all the pieces together in some giant piece of art, which is all designed to take your brain flying down the bowling alley to hit the major 10 things you want and love in your life, I'm a pretty straight guy, really. It's just I'm a good dancer, sort of.
Yeah.
You're a great bowler.
Well, so there's a background for this that I think is really important, because what I understand from your less than conventional background is it equipped you to be able to handle what I'm going to call dynamic complexity, which Barnett and I on this show have said that's the nature of things. And just like the movie script, they try to take this manual and all this amazing work you did with remote viewing and so forth and crunch it down into 90 minutes. And the truth is, what's so spectacular, Jim, about you and about your work is that you are equipped with a capacity most people don't have, which is to handle dynamic complexity.
Yeah, well, we were all raised by talking heads.
Yeah.
So if you can't draw and you can't put numbers of things in a good relationship with each other on a canvas or a piece of paper, you're not talking about planet Earth. God built the set, and it's so magnificent, prime creator, whoever it might be. But the trick is writing, a plot line for every human being every day. Oh, dumb idea.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so what you do is you get some agitating parts and some good parts, and you put them in the dryer and tumble them,
Yeah.
And
you do that, and you do that in part because what you do is you recreate the mythology. And part of your story, and I've had the wonderful opportunity to read your materials and to research you, is that you were handed a story in various moments in your life, and you recreated a different mythology. I'm thinking specifically of the story you tell about being in Vietnam, where you learned to trust something other than the talking heads, other than the rhetoric, other than the mythology you were being handed. You reimagined what the heck you were doing there, which made the experience not only profound for you, you brought back all of your troops, right?
Yeah, right. And most of the guys called, those dreaded Viet Cong in the jungle. You're supposed to go out and shoot and destroy their worldly goods. Did you ever want to kill Robin Hood? I mean, good grief, yes. I had to rewrite that story on the move. Absolutely. And guess what happened? The best story wins.
Yeah. That's the re-mythologizing. And that to me is really exciting because, so many of us have been handed stories that are, I call them small stories. And there's a bigger story waiting to be born if we can just, pop, as Barnett said, sort of off the reservation enough that we can see it.
Yeah, and you have to dress it up.
Dress it up.
It's just like you guys. I'm a storyteller.
Yeah.
If I want to give you a new idea, I put on some epic music. I don't care if there's 5,000 people in the room. And I know how to talk at the same temper the music has. So I can induce trance, and that's just another way I sort of take an unfair advantage of creating a story for you can't put down. And then I make a 22-foot full-on illustration like of Lemuria right now. Nobody's got any billboards on that. And then I'll do that with the music and that with the dramatic exposition, Get out of here, Shakespeare.
Well, there are a few billboards up for Lemuria, but they are shrouded in the mists of imagination. We're going to take a break now. We're going to sell some stuff. And when we come back from selling some stuff, we're going to blow away the veils and completely and get more deeply into this conversation with Jim Channon. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And we're back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Barnett Bain.
And Jim Channon, of course,
and our
live from Lemuria.
Yeah. Before we went to break, you were hot on something, Barnett?
Yeah, I wanted actually to go a little deeper into the imagining process that you describe. I happen to know from doing my homework about Jim Channon that your visioning process is not simply about ruminating and strategizing and thinking, and although that it includes that, but you'll also dance an idea and sing an idea and draw an idea, and sometimes dance and sing and draw an idea all at the very same time. And I want to ask you to share some of what those, what that brings. What is it that is activating?
That's when I get to the phase after pulling pieces together, both consciously, serendipitously and whatnot, and mapping, and I'm pretty sure I've got the cluster of ideas I want in the right sort of order with a higher purpose attached to it. Then I learned by being, killed and bored to death by PowerPoint very early that energy is way more important than information. Yeah. And you guys are living proof of it, you wackos.
Thank you very much.
Yes, well, and so when I found out I could just sort of attach one medium after another to my performance, and still leave some room for God to finish the sentence, why, heck, I couldn't resist. And they were loving the trance part, and that's shamanic. And I stumbled into the idea that talking to music was potent in that department. And so people, the reason they like stories is they get carried out and carried away. And so I look at the invitation here in the universe, and you read all this stuff about the cabal, and I go, wait a minute, stop, guys, go outside. Do you see what you're living in? Excuse me. Do you not trust the thing that made all of this? Get out of here with all that whiny shit. Sorry. And I'm sorry, I'm stacking.
Did you actually say whiny? On the radio?
That's right. No whinies on the radio.
We don't whine on the radio.
Oh, that's good.
No, but I tried to tell a lot of people I was not a conspirator. I was a pro-spirator, and they just kind of laughed. They didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah. So the story, the story, the mythology, is that most people are holding. Again, to go back to what we talked about earlier, is so small. And what you're bringing on, to go back to the harmonics piece, is you got a lot more frequencies that you've learned to trust and to pull from to organize a far more constructive story with a huge dose of mystery. As you put it, let God finish the sentence. So this is really apropos, because I'm going to guess that all three of us agree that the logic and reason, the whole old way that we've held things, is insufficient for a lot of the challenges that we face. So bringing on these other vital capacities is, I'm going to call it critical.
Let's have a show of hands on that.
I'm giving you my shaka sign.
That's really good.
Yeah, you are already, we know you are an unindicted pro-conspirator. How do you even say that? Pro what? Pro-spirator.
Spirator,
right. A pro-spirator. That's even better than I thought it was.
Well, let's get these vital capacities and the harmonics going, because I think that's the juice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so hum a song.
You're
okay, you want to start?
No, I have to do the story to it.
You got to do the whole. Do you have to do everything by yourself?
That's right. Oh my goodness.
Yes, but you're right. You want a multidimensional world, you better tell a multidimensional story. Come on. Yeah, really. So
and the audience for that story is expanding because it again, the movie was talking to the folks making movies are often working with let's call it a limited capacity.
Well, we're second to be first.
That's right.
Actually, we're first to be second.
That's right. First to be second.
Well, I love nothing more than walking on stage after doing all my kind of work, calculating. Maybe I have a couple of rigged art pieces up and whatnot, but I just turn it over. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure who's talking all the time, mm-hmm. but I leave plenty of. I bump the space around in such a way that God can finish my sentences. Presuming, that's who it is. Mm-hmm. And then I will have to watch the video tape to find out what I said.
I know. I love that.
Yeah, sometimes you even agree with it.
Well, that's the best part. And then the next time I go up, I say, what the hell? I won't even do an introduction.
Well, and maybe even learn from it. I mean, all I can tell you after 3 years and change of doing this show is I learned more listening back to the thing than in the moment. I mean, it's really interesting because there is this element, right? And we
it's the resonance. And as you just said, Jim, not only I'll meet you and I'll raise you. Not only is God finishing the sentence, but God is also supplying the text, the supertext, the subtext, and the context. Yep. So it is the what is going on between where all the juice is, all the magic is. Mm.
So I finally got this idea: if I get this 22-foot canvas up, and I started with a general landscape. And then every time I would be woken up, at 3 o'clock in the morning with a download, I could go to the map on the big canvas and plot and cartoon an idea over here, not knowing what idea was coming the next day.
That is delicious.
Yeah, it is delicious. And sitting in that studio, God, I've been waiting for that one. 74 years to get my own studio. And I can dance in there, and I got video, blah, blah, blah.
You got a hot plate?
Barnett's coming over. Make him some soup, would you?
We pick fruit as we go.
So what is so exciting in I'm going to say who you are, for me, is how many compelling ideas you've gotten that you trusted. I mean, your entire life is this series of compelling ideas that most folks would have said were unrealistic, right? I love unrealistic, by the way, because in 1879, when they told, when the light bulb guy, Edison, was working on the light bulb, it was completely unrealistic that you would walk in a room, flip a switch, and all these lights would come on. And you are that guy. You're the unrealistic guy.
It seems like it's unrealistic, but when you look at the battle out there, my stuff is right on the ground. I'm peanut butter and jelly. I just say God wants us to love each other, but is going to make us earn it. But let's just start there, people. And I'll do that in an audience. And I say, come on, let's assume that, we could leave this conference feeling really up, but let's just start that way. Come on. Wow. And then, breathe. What do you need to do to pump your heart about 3 times normal size, and then get out of your own way? All right, ready, go. And when I did my TED Talk, they were flabbergasted that I didn't have charts for everything, and then to the end, I just disobeyed all the rules. Walked on the stage. I modeled 5 behaviors that I thought people like being.
That was fantastic, by the way.
Fantastic.
The modeling. There were people there that were scratching their heads. They're bald. They scratched themselves freaking bald. And by the end of the talk, they got it.
Yeah.
That these were modeled behaviors. Just fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, how does PowerPoint help you explain to people that you're, an available, friendly person? And no, you can't just write that on the PowerPoint. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work. So I had to model, being available, being friendly, being grown up, being kind, being funny. Mm-hmm. Ask a girl, what's the attractive power about any man? Well, he's funny and he washes his hands.
He washes his hands.
I wish I had known that earlier.
Yeah, boy, I would have been more successful in my teen years. Oh, taking your cue from nature, taking your cue from more reliable sources than the talking heads. I think this is such a powerful message, because I do think we've lost track, many of us, of our true nature. And it's not as it is both. Here's paradox. Bernard and I love paradox because that's the only game in town. The paradox is it is both incredibly complex and dynamic, and simultaneously incredibly simple.
We're talking nature?
We're talking about nature and taking our cue from nature and all the ways that we've head tripped ourselves out of who we really are, and the harmonics that are going to really serve us and provide the most juice.
I have wind that comes across my property at 14 knots. I break it down by slowing it with bushes and things, but it gets to my house, and I have 57 plants, and they all have different leaf shapes. Every leaf shape makes a different sound. There's your complexity. The overall sound is a sound of life force. I have 2/3 of my house open to nature. I never close the windows or doors or whatever. But that sound is always in my presence. It's like standing on the front of a huge ship. You get 14 knots of wind in your face, and the sound of the ocean bouncing. You want to feel alive? You want to plant an orchestra? You can. And guess what? They also dance, all the trees and bushes. So I put all the wiggly ones on the front, and I put the straight ones in the background. And then I begin to build corridors with color popping up wherever it needs to pop up. I don't let any ground be too flat. It has to go down into a well and then up into a hillock, so I can imagine all the little people are there. So I have like 17 layers to my landscaping. That's the complex part. The plain part that gets you is the vibration. Some poor guy walks in here from New York, and the first day he's taken apart by all of this natural power and energy. The second day he's like holding on to things, and by the third day he says, "I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave.
Yeah,
keep me here." No, swear to God. Jose had a thing called the biopsychic. That's what my forest is.
Jose, he of blessed memory.
Oh, he would throw little hot ideas out way ahead of time.
Yeah, he was ahead of his time. Now you have Jim, a whole, not just a little green footprint going on there. You have a whole community that you're building there. Yes.
Yes, I'm working with a 3-acre homestead here, which I call a botanical oasis now. You have sort of 12.
40 acres and a green mule.
What?
40 acres and a green mule.
Yeah, I don't know that one, but it's the small piece. The next bigger piece is the ag park. The next bigger piece is the global village. The next bigger piece is the watershed, and the next bigger piece is the bioregion. And I've done the visions for every town in my bioregion. And so we forget to call things like the watershed idea has been pushed out, and that's a dumb thing, because watershed is the big deal. When I say I have 14 knots of wind, that's free energy. I have fresh water rolling downhill, that's free energy. And then you put things in the way to make noise. Nature can do so much, and I don't worry about the world and the way it's set up to be Halloween. I live in paradise.
Yeah,
I'm here.
That's an empowered choice.
It's a great choice, and it's a great quote. The world is set up to be Halloween. That every once in a while, we hear something on this show that is a languaging that allows for so much, allows things to drop in with such clarity. Just comes a little more into focus and a little more into focus. We think we understand these things. I certainly do. I certainly think I understand these things. But that's exactly the challenge here, is that it's not about thinking.
Right. Well, it's about attuning.
It's about attuning. Well, that's as good that's
good.
Good.
And the attuning too, again, as you were talking, Jim, about all of the the ways that you've set this environment up with the windows open, the awareness of the wind, and the conscious choices that are really about beauty and about synchronicity and about, encouraging the energy of the life force, and in experiencing it. It's powerful because, again, many of us, and I live in Los Angeles, a bunch of cement boxes, we miss out on our true nature. And even when we're in nature, I think of like Walden Pond as that great moment where we went, oh, that's what life's really about. As simple, again, and complex simultaneously, where it's a return to and an attunement to something that is far more nourishing.
And more.
Thank you.
It's
expansive by nature.
It's not about simply returning to.
No, that's a good point.
It is remembering and more. We're conscious about it now.
Yeah, taking our cue.
Conscious means we're participants.
I love that.
Nature may not know it's participating.
Feeling guilty about something like we messed the planet up, and so what we do is go out and plant a 10 by 10 lettuce garden. Get out of here. Get a bigger shovel.
Get out of here. All right, speaking of getting out of here, the bad news is that we've got to get out of here. So, Jim, I want more, and I'm sure our audience wants more. So and I know there's a bunch of places to get to you, but I'd love you to give maybe the top 3 where folks can tap into your attunement and borrow some of your wisdom.
Cool. Well, I just popped a master's degree up called thecyberversity.com.
I love
believe
that.
I got that name.
Wow. When's the commencement?
Yeah, that depends on how fast you are.
Okay.
Yes. And that's a great way. Then if you get jimchannon.org, that is a key to the other 12 websites. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so great I can live out here in the bushes and teach, 45 million people stuff.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's another paradox. Yeah, that's another. Yeah. How can you be so visible and yet preserve your way of life, preserve your privacy?
That's going to be the next show when we have Jim back.
That's true. We're going to have Jim back in the studio, so we better clear the stuff off the walls.
Hey, Jim, we're both going to see you personally in about a week. But first, I just want to thank you on behalf of our audience for spending some time with us today.
I love the rap style.
All right, bud. Yeah. All right, and for those of you listening, stay tuned because we'll be right back after these messages to wrap it up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
Thank you for staying with us. Boy, that was a lot of fun.
Oh,
he's
man.
He's really a lot of fun.
There's so many things about Jim
that
are so powerful. I want to say how much I love his TED Talk. That guy is off the hook. So, audience, if you haven't
seen it... Does it make you
it,
laugh, though? I mean, because you're watching that TED Talk and the camera goes to some of the folks in the front row, and they don't know who. We thought this guy was like a major in the United States Army. We're all in deep trouble.
Yeah.
And then very quickly they go from that to puzzlement and curiosity, and then they just kind of clamor on board, and it's an amazing transformation right in real time on camera.
He's so tuned in, and it's just a thrill to have him. I was thinking before the show because obviously in the time we spent researching him and so forth, I knew it was like, wow, we could go anywhere. This guy has so many different lives.
Yeah.
He was in the Army. His childhood's fascinating too. Anyhow, we'll have to have him back because there's more to talk about. Anyhow, so look, leave a little bit, for God to finish the sentence. Let's.
How good is that?
That's so good. And then we've been living in the Halloween story, but you don't have to. You can.
The Halloween story, boy, that is good.
Rich material.
That is really, really good. Well, what should we talk about?
We're talking about it. We're in the middle of it. I'm inspired.
I'm totally inspired, but I'm waiting for the moment when God upwells in the space between, and it shows up. I'm having a little deja vu of a deja vu.
I like that.
So
That's good.
yesterday,
Double deja vu.
I was on another radio show on the East Coast talking about the Milton Secret movie.
Yeah.
And I was on hold, and that sort of green room, that kind of liminal place. It's where you're not in this world and you're not in that world, in between, waiting before you go on. And the producer and the host on that program lost me, couldn't figure out what line they had me on and where they were going, and I could hear the
That's great.
host at the same time trying to fill the space, trying to kind of not, it would have been great if he just said, well, we don't really know what's going on. And, life is so unpredictable.
Instead
life
of
is so
covering.
mysterious. But there was this kind of vamping and vamping and vamping and vamping.
That's a great one, too. How many ways? It's almost like petting the horse. So you harken back to an old show. How many times when things go wrong, we start feeling like we have to cover?
I got to fix it. Got to cover. I got to look good.
Okay. I mean, we had that recently. We had a guest we couldn't get a hold of. We got on the show. We're like, oh, my God, we've got a guest. So that we're frazzled, and we've been, like, scrambling, and we had the wrong telephone number. It happened, like, 3 weeks in a row, didn't it? It was bizarre.
Yeah, you think there's, like, a pattern there. There's some sort of pattern
Well,
there.
you take your cue from what's happening. I mean, this is, again, one of those things where, we've talked about the scent. It's like, can I pick up a scent that's in my space, that's floating around, that is there to offer me something, but again, I've got it held in such a fixed way, again, that old sort of model of visioning where it's goal oriented and I want it to look a certain way versus more quality driven, and who knows what can happen. And that is at once, terrifying and exhilarating. But we're going with the exhilarating, which, again, Jim is the guy who says, good, throw everything up in the air.
Throw it all up in the air.
Yeah.
Have a vision.
A higher purpose.
Have a vision. Have a
something.
purpose. Have a sense. Have your relationship to various futures. He talks about the future, your little family future, your micro future, and then the larger community, and the larger community, and the larger community. Have vision for it. Have a sense of it, and hold it lightly, not too tightly.
Yeah.
So that the mystery can infill the spaces. It's sort of like a Swiss cheese. You have a sense of you have a sense of things, but not too much control about how they're going to be realized, or that they may or may not be realized in exactly that way. Yeah. That balance of visioning and being totally in the present, that's a curious one, because the mind says, well, it's either or. How can I be in the present and holding a vision? Again, that is a paradox.
Let's get them all swirling at one time. Get all the plates up at one time.
Yes, they're all happening now.
And the space for miracles, the space for something yet undiscovered to unfold. Look, innovation by its very nature is going to be something we can't see from here. That's the nature of innovation, folks. So every time we're going, I'm going in to innovate. No, you're not. Because when you go in to innovate, you're trying to control. We're trying to do something different. Well, that's not sufficient either. A willingness for something to unfold, a sense of possibility, that's all you got. And every time we try to play I've got a couple tools.
You're making a distinction, a powerful one, between will and willingness.
That's it.
Will is a dynamic force, and an important one. We wouldn't have any roads, bridges, relationships, doors opening, keys put in the ignition of your car unless you had will. And then there's also the willingness, which is not a dynamism, it's an animism. That's part of that natural world where you receive and you allow and you let mystery unfold. It's that animism and the dynamism together that is the cutting edge of what makes us human.
Yeah, so what we started with is we have this notion of what we want. And this is the best my mind can come up with. And then we jump. And the ride takes on a life of its own. This is precisely what you were talking about this morning. And I'd even say, look, it's the whole, if I'm open to say, it's the crowdfunding, that you jumped off this cliff and go, wow, this is such a risk for me. I'm throwing myself out there. And we were both sitting there saying, but we know it's the right thing to do. And you went through the harmonic, the little voice that's saying, it could turn out terribly bad. And I'm like, yeah, and that's okay too. Like, what if you couldn't fail? We're back to that one again. You know, we've said that a number of times. Like, what if there is no failure? This whole failure and success, the whole talking head story of this is how the world works, it's just a bad bargain. It's just too limited.
Well, I think all of us know that. I know that, and you know that, and I think our listeners know that. We know it cognitively.
Right.
We have, however many years of, for each of us individually, life on the planet, of our own lives here, plus as you say, the generational heritage. It's so sewn into our DNA, so that although we know it, we're still knowing it cognitively. Right. It still fits comfortable as a knowing inside of my logical schema for how life works.
Right.
I know it. However, experientially, I can't have a real knowingness of it inside of that little mental thought form.
Yeah.
And so to experience life outside and beyond that little thought form is, it's dreadful. And when I use that word advisedly, by that I mean it brings up a sense of such utter non-being, because to a thought form, if you're not processing the world through our thought forms, then the thought form feels that it is no longer being.
It's a death and rebirth constantly.
Yes, and that becomes a fight for life.
It does. And so, you know, so much of the themes in our shows, it's this art element. And art always involves a certain amount of risk, risking what we've known in favor of something yet undiscovered. That's the process.
Great art.
Great art. Yeah.
But I mean, all art is creative and inventive.
Right.
But there are octaves of artistry.
That's right.
And at the highest end, these, you know, look at Picasso, who is able to perceive and conceive of the world cubism in ways that were absolutely, there was no precedent for it. And then
it was unrealistic.
He brings it into the world the best he can, and tries to share this vision, and people have a lot of antipathy about it, and eventually it becomes part of the language of the world. Those are the innovators who change things for the entire world.
And I don't want to tell this mythology or this story as if it's a prescription, but it is worth noting that so many of them in their lifetime were not quote-unquote successes. They just did what they had to do, and then, you know, 100 years later, I was like, whoa, this guy had it. So, I mean, I'm not saying that that's a good idea to, like, jump on that boat and say, well, you know, there's a suffering and bleeding and so forth for your art. That's not necessarily required. I just want to note that you
that didn't happen that way for Bill Gates.
So
or Steve Jobs.
Of course. And so you don't, but look, there is an element of doing it for its own sake, and you don't get to know what it's going to look like.
Or Jim Channon.
And if you're tied to success by other people's measures, you're probably not in the fullness of your game, as it were. You know, I mean...
Yes, you're replaying somebody else's hand-me-down values, or cultural hand-me-down values, or the kinds of hand-me-down values that we're all so programmed with from watching television and getting advertising. And, you know, if only I just had this brand of tennis shoes, then my life would really be okay.
Yeah. And so we let everybody off the hook. That comes along too. But that's not the bigger game.
Yeah, it comes along. As Jim was saying, you get to the point where we understand that that's a part of the soup that I am. And that largely it's been what's been running me. I've been making my choices inside it. And what are you doing?
Looking at our time.
I'm
we
watching.
Have so much time.
I think we're like a minute over. Are we like way over? Or
No, we have 5.
Oh, I can't figure out what's going on there.
Every time we get in a groove, we get lost on time. Because I'm the timekeeper, but then I start having fun and I forget to keep time.
And I never figure out what you're doing. Well, you keep changing the hand signals.
I do. We need to standardize this. This is far too loosey-goosey.
I thought maybe you had like eczema or something, or it was like a rash there that you had on your hand that you were scratching. Where were we?
I have no idea, but that's okay.
But it was fun. It was good.
Fun.
Yeah.
No, it's just interesting that when I personally am having fun, when we get engaged in something, I lose track of time. And
that's a hallmark. It is a hallmark of a more expansive being state of consciousness.
Yeah, but I don't look as
When
cool
you're
on the radio.
Well, that's true. That's true.
We're,
So
we're
we want
back
to
to that
condense it.
story you were telling about being on that show. Where why couldn't they just say, "I don't know where our guest is"? Well, let's figure this out. You know, I mean, whatever
Better to
it
be
is.
comfortable in the struggle than real in the exploration. But when we lose track of time, we have dropped into a relationship and an intimacy with aspects of ourself and of mystery that are timeless, that are outside of time, and that is the more real.
That is more real. Before we leave, because we have a few minutes, I want to hit on what we promised we'd hit on, which was the comedian. I might tip it a little bit. This irreverent comedian who was striking at a kind of genius.
Spence's story was fantastic.
Yeah. So our engineer Tom Spence was
producer, engineer, friend
was judging a comedy competition. He is Tom in his own right is a radio
Who
personality.
is he to judge? Judge not, lest you be judged, Spence.
And he was saying to you this morning that he was blown away by a kind of authenticity, a kind of irreverence that was striking in this one comic. And in the judging, he actually took away points for creativity, even though he loved it because it didn't fit the criteria of what everyone wanted to see. Is that the story?
Yes, that was it. And it was so fantastic because he was acknowledging that she was not simply being irreverent and shattering taboos in order to be sensational.
Right.
That she was operating from a place of brilliance and insight, and that there was a wisdom that was being imparted there, and funny. That she was really putting people into holding up a mirror where they could see some of the places that they operate from. And so they were pretty ambivalent about how to respond to her, which was the only reason that she didn't win, because the criteria were very prescribed. And he was saying he wished that he could just grade her on her impact in the room and on her genius, because she clearly blew everybody away. But how often do we play small because we have to fit rules, or because we have to be inside the conventions, inside the norms?
And there's another lesson in this, because part of what the story illustrates is the feedback she seemingly got was that it wasn't as good as it actually was from one of her greatest fans, only because he was bound by the rules.
That's
as
right.
it were. But I mean,
color inside the lines.
But see, that's such a great thing, because I mean, so many times, and you and I know with this show, you know, we've been sort of going along, and every once in a while we'll get feedback. Recently, we got some very flattering feedback from someone in the industry who we respect, right? And it was such a pleasant thing, because I don't know what we're talking about with Jim. I don't know if it's any good. I mean, we just do what we do because we know it feels good, and we have enough of a sense that we're off.
And we lose track of time.
We
keep getting these big. That was a much better hand signal. It was a whole giant iPad with a running clock.
Yeah. But the point that I want to say is this thing of, in the moment, learning to trust our craft and our art, because the feedback, we might get mixed messages in our world. I mean, again, one of our biggest fans, Dr. Points, but he's one of our biggest fans.
Yeah.
He said when he came, he said, "This woman's going to be huge. She's amazing," you know? And so, you know, if we're looking for feedback, you know, from that sort of small self, which is okay, comes along too, you know, we're going to make choices that may rob us of our great artistry.
Now, that is why we have vision.
Yes.
So that we look for feedback that is in alignment with the vision.
Right. Quality-based vision.
Yes, it takes. You know, we live still. We're in time and we're in space, and as long as we're playing there, we're both. It's what we are, and we are learning to be multidimensional, as Jim says. So the feedback comes inside of time and space, and there is a lag time between what it is that we're holding as a frequency, a vision, and what is being mirrored back.
And the lag time may even be our entire lifetime, as illustrated by some great artists. But that's okay too.
Yeah.
And with that, it's got to be okay that we're done, because it's time. So for those of you
visit us on Facebook.
visit us. And before we leave,
visit us at
Milton's Secret.
Support Milton's Secret.
Support Milton's Secret.
www.supportmiltonsecret.com. Watch the video. You'll love it, I hope.
Share it.
Let us know what you think of it.
And keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness.